Hi, so roll call. Is Judith here?
Oh, sorry, I am. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Judith's here. I think I saw that James Oku.
Oh, James
is
Oku is
here.
here.
All right. We're waiting on Natalie. Louis Fagoni, are you present?
I don't see him.
Maybe he's, hasn't unmuted. Jonathan Winslow.
I'm here. Thank you.
Nice background, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Sean Bart. Okay, I'm next on the list, and I'm here. Bill Cook.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Peter Markey.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Ryan Casey.
I'm here.
Great. Fred Crowder.
I'm here. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. And then I'm kind of trying to look at the agenda wall, so I can't really see the Zoom, but go back and forth. Has Natalie made it yet? Seems like we have a quorum already, but looks like Lawrence.
Okay, I think Lauren Silverman. I'm here.
All right, we just did roll call. Is Lauren here?
I am here if you can hear me.
Yeah, she said yes.
Here she is.
Great.
Hello, and unfortunately my internet connection is unstable today, even though it's the same internet I use all the time. So I'm gonna have my video off just to try to spare the bandwidth.
Cool. I might turn my video off because I'm not I don't appreciate my my appearance right now that much, but it also it sometimes makes my internet more stable as well. Did we get I guess we're just waiting on Natalie, but we do have a quorum. So I do I don't know how you deal with that. I think I came to a meeting late once and then I got marked as absent even though I was here later, but we'll just try to make sure that doesn't happen for anyone that comes late.
Yeah, it depends on if I capture it in the minute in my notes or not. So that was probably my fault. But do you mind if we what time did you call the meeting to order so I can put it in my notes? Sorry.
I think I looked at it, said 7:02.
7:02.
We've been.
Thank you.
Indeed.
There's someone in the attendees that has their hand up.
I think that's
Thanks, James.
Peter Markey.
I'm here.
Oh. Okay. Did you have your hand raised for a reason, Peter, or just?
Oh, I don't know. Should I push *9 again to unraise it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's probably
think
harder
so,
to
yeah.
figure out on the phone. Okay, great.
Okay, are we ready to adopt a resolution?
Let's do it.
Okay, this is Lauren, and I move that we adopt a resolution that as a result, continuing COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health and safety of attendees.
Second.
Okay, and let's take a roll call vote. Do you want to call it, John, or do you mind if I run it down for us?
Go
I'll
ahead.
take that as a go ahead. Judy,
Yes.
yeah, thank you. James,
Yes.
thank you. Natalie is not here yet. Oh, Louis sent me an email that he would be, unable to attend. Just to pass that message along. Jonathan,
Yes.
I think my sound blipped. Jonathan, did you have a vote?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I did. I vote yes. Can you hear that?
Thank you.
Mhm.
John, yes,
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
John is
John,
yes also.
thank you. Bill,
Yes.
great. Peter,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Fred,
Aye.
I think that was a yes.
That was a yes. Indeed.
Thank you. And I am Lauren and I vote yes. Unanimous pass.
He thought mine was an R, okay?
Yes, it was a pirate.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so are we on to item number 4? Did everyone, or I guess maybe Peter didn't vote on that one.
What's that?
No, I got his vote. Sorry. It was unanimous yes. This
Oh,
that
you
passed.
got everybody. Okay. Unanimous. Okay.
Yeah.
Agenda item 4, oral communications, to allow the public to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. If your subject is not on the agenda, we will try to recognize you at this time. If anybody sees a hand up, let me know.
If you're on the phone, it's *9 if you want to put your hand up.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
I see no hands.
Going once, going twice.
All right. Let's move on to committee member updates or questions.
I've got something.
Great, Bill. Go ahead.
I have not been actively farming for some months now. So I am, and I'm filling a slot as a farmer on this. So I've talked with Summer earlier today, just finding out kind of what's the protocol for this situation. Want to make sure we're doing things by the numbers. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that's the case.
Bill, it seems like you're always growing something. Guess it's not a
kids
commercial,
count?
not commercial crop, huh?
Right. The children count?
Always. Well, I always appreciate your integrity about everything, Bill. Summer, did you have a answer for the protocol at all? Or I guess if you're appointed to a 4-year term, it's still a 4-year term regardless.
Right, yeah. And I think what Bill and I need to follow up on, and we can have a call about it tomorrow, but there are a few members who will be up for renewal this year. And Bill, our records show that you're one of those members, so we can discuss, you know, what kind of what your desire is relative to renewing as a member. It does need to go before the Board of Supervisors for renewals. So we can discuss that further, kind of what your desire is and what our desire is
Yeah,
on the
perfect.
county side.
I am looking into some livestock on our ranch where we live. So who knows, I may qualify by that time, but I just want to know what the rules are, make sure we're living by them.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there are no, I've looked back through the bylaws as well as the establishing ordinance for the Agricultural Advisory Committee. And I've not seen any specific or particular criteria related to, you know, anything at least quantitative, where, you know, you have to prove that you're an active farmer for, you know, maybe so many consecutive months or years or whatever. So we can discuss, Bill, with your renewal coming up, and then I can also, I'll need to probably just check in with council and see if they're aware of anything that maybe I'm missing.
Perfect. Onwards.
I got my hand up. This is Fred.
Okay, good.
Excellent. Thanks, John.
Go for it, Fred.
Yeah, I was wondering, we no longer have review of the previous meetings minutes on the agenda. And so are those posted to the website and we can review them there? And if there are questions about the minutes or corrections, we bring them up in the course of the meeting?
No, and actually I wanted to this was going to be my news to share anyway, and I already let Summer kind of know what the situation was, but
you can't not start taking notes.
Yeah, I lost a close family friend in a tractor accident at the end of May, and needed to take a step back from my responsibilities a bit in June. And so I promise I will catch up on all of the minutes this month, but had a personal situation that superseded my duties here and kind of took my bandwidth. So I apologize that I'm not up to date on the minutes, and I promise you'll have the rest of them on the August agenda.
No, I'm really sorry, Lauren. That's awful. No, I thought that I missed.
Too.
Yeah, I thought that I missed something somewhere, that the minutes were going to be subject to individual review, and if there was any comments, then you bring that up in the course of the meeting. So, all right, no, that's fine.
That will absolutely what we discussed, and will be moving forward. I just got behind, so you'll have the whole bunch of them next on the next agenda.
Okay. Well, if you need any help, let me know. I'd be glad to help you out.
I appreciate that. And actually, I may ask that for review on the June one, since I'll be doing it from the recording anyway. So definitely want to get an extra set of eyes on that one, just to make sure I'm capturing it accurately.
Very good. Let me know what you need. I'd be glad to help.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate it. And yeah, I was gonna share that news, not to bring everyone down, but you know, we all know how dangerous farming can be, and sometimes the most dangerous. So yeah.
It's right up there as the #1 occupational hazard.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear of your loss, Lauren. And you're up on #6 too, because you're the COVID-19 pandemic. No, it seems like. Did
yeah, actually, I was going to say I don't really have a.
Go ahead.
I have a little bit about COVID. I don't really have a report from my department, but a little bit about COVID in the county. We are at the CDC's high red community level. And so as usual, we're still recommending that residents wear masks indoors and in public transportation. And of course, to stay up to date on your boosters and vaccinations. So that message hasn't changed at all. So that's about it for the COVID. There is a report about San Gregorio State Beach, and residents are urged to avoid the creek and lagoon due to the presence of toxic algae. So I think many of you probably have heard about that living on the coast. So just to put that out there. But that's all I have for today.
Thanks, Corin.
Thanks, Corin.
Good to see you.
And then I know I normally the update on kind of the community stuff, but I also took a step back from those community groups last month. So I'm not quite fully up to date on exactly what's happening, but I do know there's still weekly testing and vaccination clinics available regularly in Half Moon Bay for those seeking that, and local pharmacies as well. And I'll probably have more of an update next month.
Okay, and then we sort of have number 7 is always on the agenda, and usually Audria will talk about that, but we've had that meeting, and maybe Jess Brown has something to add, but it sounds like it's kind of in or BJ I see is in the audience. But we're kind of at the, oh, there she is. Audria, please chime in. If you're able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we just need to allow her to talk. So I'm trying to press that button. Summer, I don't know if you have better internet than me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear anything I said before?
No.
Okay. Just a small update that we got a small grant to host a working group to pull together about 10 producers representing the diversity of San Mateo County Ag to participate in a series of 5 meetings to kind of come up with a proposal for anything that would help gain access to markets. So we don't know what that is. It's going to come out of the working group, and the end product will ideally be a proposal that we can take to get funding to put something in action. So we're just working on forming the working group right now. And that's it.
Audria, where did the grant come from?
It came from the UC system.
Cool. That's exciting. That there'll be further action on that.
Audrey, you mentioned 10 growers participating initially. Any ideas to the composition of those 10 growers or the types of ag that they're involved in?
Yeah, so I'm working on this project with some folks that help plan the May meeting. So we looked at who attended the May meeting and then just tried to pull together folks that are kind of diverse in what they're growing, the type of management practices, where they're located within the county, and also in their business model, and also demographically. So, which was, you know, a challenge to try and get so many different perspectives in one small list. So we've started reaching out and we're just trying to form that group right now.
Good luck with that. We have a lot of diversity in our agricultural community,
Yep.
which is one of its strengths.
And then it's not meant to just be, we're hoping that the people that participate in the working group also, you know, reach out and ask other producers, kind of as representatives, what their opinions are throughout the process. So it'll be about a 5 or 6 month process. So I'm sure we'll have updates for you.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a message here from Natalie that she will not
Very
be
great.
at the meeting tonight.
Will or will not?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing.
Will or will not?
Will not. No Natalie tonight.
I will certainly I will miss her in the Ag-Tourism discussion since she served on the subcommittee, but we've got her notes. Okay, are we ready for the Community Development Director's report?
Yes, please.
Audria has her hand up again.
I was wondering if Jess was on the call and if he could give an update about the work that Farm Bureau is doing.
Yes, I'd be glad to. First, I want to thank Judy. Judy has reached out to various entities that she knows looking for suggestions on visits or information about permanent farm location, marketing location. So thank you, Judy. And then Farm Bureau continues to discuss this. They've gotten some leads that they're exploring. You know, we'll have more information later.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Jess, for the update. Good.
Andrew, is your hand up again, or was that from before? From before, I take it, since it just went down. Okay, Summer, you want to walk us through the Community Development Director's report?
Sure. So for the Community Development Director's report for this month, this is essentially covers the month of June, from June 2nd to June 30th. There were no PAD, Planned Agricultural District permits, heard by the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission. There were no new PAD permit applications filed during this month, well, or the month of June. There were 2 rural coastal development permit exemption applications submitted the month of June, and those are in the director's report attachment. Both were ag wells, one at 515 Stage Road in Pescadero and one at 37 Frenchman's Creek in Half Moon Bay. And There were a few projects that don't require a PAD permit, but are in the more rural area. So we've reported on those in the other project section, and it includes an after the fact coastal development permit for an emergency domestic well that was approved back in 2021 to replace an existing failed well serving the existing residents. That application was submitted on June 30th, and that was for the location of 2510 Parisima Creek Road in North San Gregorio area. And then a consideration of amendments to the county's commercial cannabis cultivation ordinance are going to the Board of Supervisors for consideration tomorrow, July 12th, at their meeting, which starts at 9 a.m. And then consideration of a coastal development permit to repair sections of eroding road embankment down in the South Coast area, State Highway 1 at Post Mile 1.12 around Año Nuevo State Park. And that was approved by the Planning Commission at their June 22nd meeting. And the county's local appeal period ended July 7th. And also the Planning Commission approved at their June 22nd hearing the coastal development permit for the implementation of the Green Oaks Habitat Restoration Project on undeveloped farmland in a section of Año Nuevo State Park west of Highway 1 known as Steel Ranch. And the county's local appeal period on that ended July 7th. Both of those projects, the Caltrans Highway 1 project down near Año Nuevo State Park for repairs of eroding road embankment, and the Green Oaks Habitat Restoration Project. The local appeal periods have ended, and they're moving on to the Coastal Commission's 10-day appeal period. And then the next regular meeting for the Ag Advisory Committee is scheduled for August 8th, and tentatively on that agenda will be the follow-up on the local coastal program amendment related to the replacement of the Pescadero Fire Station and extension of CSA 11. If you'll recall, that item was tabled at your committee's June 13th meeting to give planning staff time to research questions raised during the AAC's consideration of the project. It may get pushed beyond that. Hopefully we can get that back in August, but we do have a change of project managers, as our planning services manager that was working on that has departed the county. So we're also going through a planner transition there to get that a new planner kind of up to date on that. So we'll see if we can get that back to you with the answers that you're looking for. And that completes the director's report.
Great, thanks, Summer. That was a fair bit of information in that one this week. Let's see here.
It's like James has his hand up.
Hi, I had a question for Summer. If the person, who do we contact if we have questions between now and the next meeting about the fire station?
The new project planner for that is Michael Schaller. And his email is, it's mschaller@smcgov.org, or feel free to email me and I can put anybody in touch with him.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I guess it's time to move on to
I
our
don't see any
regular
other hands
agenda. Number 9.
I'll read number 9 into the record for us. Number 9, presentation on Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District's agricultural policy development process. Presenter Kirk Lennington, Natural Resources Development Manager with Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, AKA MidPen.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to allow us to meet with you tonight and share some information on our agricultural policy development process. Before I go any further, just making sure you can see the slideshow and you hear me. Yes, all right, good,
Yes.
thank you, thank you. So I'm going to be sharing a brief presentation. I'm going to try to keep it quick. I have about 10 or 15 slides to run through just for context and background on our agricultural policy review and development process. But the main purpose of tonight is to share this information and to hear from you and get some feedback on your thoughts on potential roles for Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District in helping to conserve local agriculture here on the coast. And before I go any further, just introduce myself. I'm the Natural Resources Manager for the Open Space District. Again, my name is Kirk Lennington. And there's a number of MidPen staff who are here at the meeting as well. And I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves as well.
Good evening, Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. Thanks for having us tonight.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jane Mark, Planning Manager at MidPen.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Stewart. I'm the Land and Facilities Manager at MidPen.
Good evening. I'm Omar Smith. I'm the Senior Property Management Specialist for MidPen.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all. And with that, I think we'll just dive in and try to move through the slideshow here. So here is an overview of the presentation that I'm going to share tonight. And so, as I said, we're going to provide some background on our policy process. And then I'm going to share some of MidPen's agricultural conservation projects and activities that we've completed to illustrate how we've been working with our partners to achieve agricultural conservation on the San Mateo coast. After that, we'll discuss MidPen's role in agricultural conservation, some of the key elements and themes that have emerged as we've been working on developing our agricultural policy. And then finally, I'll conclude with the key steps that are remaining in our timeline for finishing out our agricultural policy development. And so I want to start here with our mission statement for MidPen. Many of you probably have seen this before. This mission statement, though, was altered when we annexed the San Mateo coast. And that's the highlight that you see here on this slide. Our mission's always focused on protecting and restoring the natural environment by establishing a network of preserves and providing opportunities for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. However, in 2004, when we expanded our boundaries into San Mateo, the coastal San Mateo County, we also expanded our mission statement, and we've added agricultural complements to the rest of our work to acknowledge the agricultural significance of the region and to focus our work on agricultural conservation and to begin to describe how we're going to accomplish that. The next series of slides here just presents some of the growth of the properties that MidPen has acquired and that we manage as open space since our coastal service plan was adopted in 2004. So here you see the dashed blue outline is the boundary of the San Mateo coast that was added to our district boundaries. And you see our preserves in the green. And then by 2009, you see that we've added a number of different preserves, including the former Driscoll Ranch to our La Honda Open Space Preserve, Minigo Hill, Minigo Ranch was added there, Tunitas Creek. And then by 2014, we've also added a number of properties to our, what is that? Miramontes Ridge Open Space Preserve. And that's the Purisma Canyon areas, as well as the Toto Ranch property at the mouth of the San Gregorio watershed. 2019, another addition. And then finally, 2021, this is our current land holdings. And then you see outlined here in black additional properties that we are working on finishing the acquisition process on right now. All told, that'll bring our, we're up to somewhere around 12,000 acres of land that we've added to the district's boundaries in the 18 years that we've been working since we've expanded our boundaries on the coast. Much of that is agricultural land, and I'll start discussing that now. So the boundaries were approved for our expansion by the San Mateo County Local Agency Formation Commission. And that allowed us to buy and manage properties. Since that time, the majority of the lands that we've added has been in rangeland. That has been our focus, and I'll be showing a map after this slide that shows you those properties. We've added 2,000 acres of rangeland that was not previously being grazed in that period of time. And then also you'll see item 3 here on this slide. Row crops have been a relatively small component of the properties that we've added to our open space. There's only 31 acres of intensively cultivated row crop lands, and then an additional 2 acres of tree farm that we have leased out. The slide also shows that Peninsula Open Space Trust has been our primary partner in accomplishing this work. And we've worked with them to protect nearly 500 acres of farmland that has remained in private ownership during that time. And that is in compliance with our coastal service plan that points us to trying to not own in fee title the agricultural properties aside from the rangeland that we purchase on the coast. So here's the map that illustrates those grazing properties and the rangeland properties. You can see the large majority is in the San Gregorio watershed, and then moving up into the Tunitas Creek watershed and the Purisma Creek watershed. I want to focus on a single project just to use this to illustrate how we have seen the best success, I would say, in agricultural conservation work. And this is a property that you're probably, or a project that you're probably familiar with. This is the Johnson Ranch. This property, working with Post again, totaled nearly 900 acres. It's 868 acres. And we focused on the purchase and the ownership and management of the uplands property. So that's that 644 acres that you see on this slide here that is in purple. And that's consists of grassland habitats and rolling hills with mixed forests, and it's adjacent and along the Arroyo Leon tributary within this watershed. It's grazed by a local cattle rancher on the north side of Higgins-Purisma Road. We retain the grazer on this property and work with him to continue to be able to stay on this property and use his cattle to manage the land within our conservation grazing program. And then you also see on this map the 224 acre yellow area that is the irrigated row crop land of this property. And that was retained by Post and transferred to the local farmer who grows Brussels sprouts, and then in the southern portions, dry farms hay on those parcels. That was transferred to that farmer with agricultural easements that were affirmative easements to ensure that the land remained in agricultural production. So what this illustrates are some of the primary roles that we see Mid-Penn serving in conserving the regional agriculture. The first is in protecting rangelands. And so we see this as a win-win opportunity in which we support the local agriculture by keeping these lands in active grazing management. We're able to invest in infrastructure to ensure that the grazing meets our objectives for managing the habitat values and the ecosystem function on these landscapes. The second is by protecting habitat, and that's either by acquiring or managing the lands with the high resource values, and also managing conservation easements on sensitive areas such as riparian corridors, creek habitats, and ponds. And then finally, the third area is in providing or facilitating opportunities for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. And we see this as a compatible use within these lands on the coast. And before moving on, I just wanted to pause here in this beautiful picture here of the coast. And what you're seeing is a picture from the coast looking up Prisma Canyon. And it provides a nice overview of our agricultural conservation work. This beautiful mosaic of prime agricultural lands starts with these crop fields that you see in the foreground of this photo on the coastal terrace. And then that moves up into the rolling grasslands and the hills, where we see the majority of our work in preserving that remarkable biodiversity that is within those hillside areas. And then that eventually moves up into steeper and forested mountain landscapes. That's where the rainfall and the water is captured that yields the water that supports the local agriculture. And then it's these riparian corridors that meander down through here that provides the ecosystem services that support all of our work on the San Mateo coast. So our basic question in our policy development process is, in considering the scope of our mission statement and our existing policies, where does Mid-Penn fit into this landscape? And what are the best ways that Mid-Penn can help to protect these agricultural lands that are significant not only regionally, but I would say also throughout the state, and that's economically, aesthetically, and ecologically. And so here is the remaining, or the timeline for this project and the remaining steps. We're here somewhere in the middle. You'll see this first arrow at the end of that July 22 that identifies the stakeholder and our partner consultation and engagement process. And we've been meeting with a number of partners as we've been trying to accomplish this consultation process. Let's see if I can find my notes here. I seem to have disheveled them. It's all right, I don't need them. And so we have a few more folks that we're going to talk to. We're meeting with the PMAC tomorrow night. And then we're going to be meeting with our partners, such as the Resource Conservation District and Post, to get their input into this process as well. And then we're going to start actually trying to draft some of the language of our agricultural policy. We're going to start with an outline, and that's going to be brought back to our board of directors in September, the end of September. That study session will also be the point at which we present all of the feedback that we've received from all of this consultation process. And then after the board gives us direction, then we will go and actually start drafting our policy. And so it might be useful for the discussion and the feedback and questions that you might have for us at the end of my presentation here, just to see some of the main themes that have emerged from this consultation process. I put them here on the slide. The first is the structure of our agricultural leases, both the duration, the timeline, as well as how we go about actually advertising for new tenants. Also, the agricultural workforce housing has been a significant theme that we've heard from partners on as we've been going through this process. The next area is the theme has been the role that Mid-Penn serves in supporting agriculture outside of conservation grazing. And so that includes things such as the types of agriculture, whether we hold land in easement or fee title, and also how we work with our partners and strengthening our work with our partners to accomplish the conservation objectives. And then another theme finally has been how we work to support more environmentally sensitive agricultural practices and what that might look like. I think that's it. Yeah, so with that, that's all I want to share in terms of the background on policy, and look forward to hearing your comments and also answering any questions if you have those.
I got a comment if I may speak. Jonathan? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, one thing too, I think that you should always add is that you guys would always honor the MOU you have with Farm Bureau.
The MOU, Peter, could you explain what that is?
They know what that is. The MOU that the Farm Bureau made a deal with for Mid-Penn when they annexed the coast. So in your policies, make sure you always mention that you always will honor the MOU that you have with the Farm Bureau. So that way it's will never be forgotten.
Yeah, and we have a memorandum of understanding with the Farm Bureau that incorporates a lot of the information that was in the coastal annexation plan, including mitigation measures that were required as part of the process, and a consultation process with the Farm Bureau. So the Farm Bureau was one of the partners that we have presented to on this policy program earlier last week. But also every time we're doing something related to agriculture on the coast, we consult with the Farm Bureau as part of the MOU.
No, I realize that. It's just when you always go down with your updating your policies, it's just always good to always say that, of course, we still have the MOU with the Farm Bureau. That way we always know it's never forgotten.
Yeah, I noted that comments to make sure we note that. I just wanted to make sure other folks understood what you were referring to.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Fred, do you have your hand up?
You're muted.
I think you're muted.
Fred,
Fred.
you're on mute.
Oh, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Good to see you. Anyway, appreciated the survey and completed that and submitted it. And looking at your preliminary results as you had them there, I definitely agree with the need to look at farm worker housing. You know, for our county, it is, I mean, one of the biggest issues and challenges for growers. So, you know, anything that can be done to help address that would be appreciated. I also just wanted to mention that, you know, supporting a more environmentally sensitive agriculture, the last one there, I'm fully in agreement with that, but I think a lot of the public don't understand that agriculture is one of the most highly regulated industries. And I mean, you talk about air, you talk about water, you talk about soil, you talk about ESA, you talk about pesticides, you know, worker safety, all those things. And I think it's really important to educate the community, or at least the public supporting community, on the fact that agriculture is so heavily regulated with regards to those things. So I think that addresses a lot of the concerns and the misconceptions that the public has about agriculture itself. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good to see you as well, Fred.
Thanks, Fred. It looks like Bill, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. So along the same lines with that Fred was just talking about, and I was the water quality program director for the Farm Bureau back around 2001 for a couple of years. And on this same bullet point, supporting more environmentally sensitive agriculture, I think this is really important, and it's something that is constantly evolving. And I'm curious about how can we set up or what type of system you guys are thinking of setting up in order to make sure that there's continued input from the community and our local stakeholders in the development of the practices and systems. So I don't know, are you going to have like a local, committee, or do people just show up at your meetings and raise their hands, or what's the process for participating in that?
Yeah, so for this process, we're going through a public outreach process. We'll have at least 2 public meetings, and we've already had a series of public meetings on the ag policy development. So that's the opportunity for setting the board's high level policy. And then, because we're a public agency, when we're doing individual projects, there's also input into that. We also continue relationship with the Ag Advisory Committee and with the Farm Bureau for continuing to get input on ongoing projects. But the first step is this, and there's really 2 levels of it. When the district owns and manages and leases the land, what does the district direct? What does the open space district encourage? Or does the district support agricultural, ecologically sensitive practices outside of lands managed by the district as well?
Sure. I think I'm just going to try and be a little more clear. My question is that after this initial process that we're all going through now, and once your sort of your protocols and current systems are in place, then ongoing throughout the decades as we move forward, what's the process for receiving input from the community, from experts, from whatever resources about how to help and support more environmentally sensitive agriculture, and how do we help to evolve that as we move forward in a partnership with you guys. And so I'm wondering just what, are there any thoughts about how that will be accomplished?
Yeah, I think we look at science and research. We work with our partners like the Ag Advisory Committee, like the Farm Bureau, and then also, most importantly, with our tenants to see what they need to manage the property and to run their operation, and what we can add to that as far as the knowledge of making sure we're not impacting the natural environment. I'll use grazing as an example because that's where we've kind of specialized. The agricultural operations, as we talked about, the row crops, more intensive agriculture, we've stayed out of. And in fact, the Coastal Service Plan says that we should try to either sell those to private ownership if we already own them, or avoid owning them altogether and kind of staying out of that more intensive agricultural area. But with conservation grazing, we've done things where, like when we install a new fence, it's wildlife friendly fence. We just went through a whole review of our conservation grazing policy and how we're doing predation management. So we're actually funding research on predation and how to avoid predation of livestock. We started a reimbursement program or formalized that in that policy so that when a livestock owner does lose cattle, they get reimbursed by the district on it. We also protect sensitive riparian areas and then provide infrastructure and water systems that provides water for the cattle outside of those areas. So those are all the type of things that we're currently doing, but we'll continue to look at the science, particularly I think one that's evolving is carbon storage. And so we're doing a study on that as well to look at how the district can increase carbon storage on grazing land. So that's an example of where we're at and how that's evolved over time and working with our tenants and the ag community.
I could just tack on to Brian's response there, just because he touched on a number of things that I think all point towards one of the areas that we work quite a bit in at MidPen, and that is in advancing research. So a lot of the work that we do when we are faced with something that the science is either not very well developed or there's not a consensus around a particular subject area, we work to advance that science. And so we're doing that with how to conserve mountain lions on the peninsula. There's quite a bit of conflict both with visitors as well as with agriculture. And so we're looking at ways to learn more about that and understand if there are non-lethal methods that can be employed to try to alleviate some of those conflicts and avoid those conflicts. Likewise, we do research looking at the effectiveness for whether it's restoration or other actions that can sequester the carbon. And there's a lot of compatibility with that with both rangelands, grazing management, as well as other agricultural areas where you can actually capture quite a bit of carbon on those lands. So a couple examples, but I think that's maybe gets more at where you're going with some of your questions, Bill, maybe, which are, we can support that active research and just kind of rising tide, raising all ships kind of approach.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that this particular topic you used as an example here is really a key one where I think that as far as like carbon sequestration can be greatly affected by the type of grazing that's done and also what grazing species are used to encourage basically the deep-rooted, especially native grasses, but any of the really deep-rooted species of grasses that pump carbon into the soil and sequester it far better than most plants and trees above the ground. So I just really want to second the movement for keeping really in a really fast growing scientific area that's very promising. I think that the coast side out here could be a great sort of lead the way and hopefully and provide some really good demonstration projects. And I think you guys could play a really important role in that. I'd like to help however I can on that front.
Wonderful, thank you.
See that a member of the public, James Inglesby, has his hand raised. Did you want to address a MidPen? Maybe we need to allow him to speak too. I'm not sure how that works.
Yep, I'm off mute. Hello, everyone. I have two questions. One is about the public meetings. I just looked at your website and did not see any public meetings being listed. A way we can get an invite or some details about those public outreach meetings that you were referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you, I usually put my email on my title slide here, and I apologize I didn't do that tonight, but we can make sure that you all get a copy of my email address, and you can email me. I can add
Great.
you to our interested parties list so that we can keep you up to date on what's happening with this project.
That'd be great. And then my second question kind of echoes what Fred Crowder was saying about the crisis with farm worker housing, but it's actually more than that. It's also a severe lack of economic opportunities for farm worker families. Agriculture is not genetic. There's some aspects that work for some, but not all members of a family. And I wanted to know what discussions you have to date, or maybe in your drafting, around the economic opportunities outside of agriculture. Because as you probably know, one of the compatible uses for this land, especially land that is not prime agricultural soil or land suitable for agriculture, is commercial recreation. And there is a challenge that we're all experiencing. And I just wanted to see what is MidPen, and you said your partner in Post, what is your policy around economic activities outside of agriculture?
So I'll just address kind of the outreach first that we've done with the farm worker community. And we met with Puente, and then we met with, and same sort of framework as this, same presentation. And then we met with the Farm Worker Affairs Coalition to get input. And they did actually have input on the issue that you're asking about. One part was the leasing issue. And that was to make sure that leases were put out to competitive bid to provide opportunity to people that have not been able to engage in the agricultural production through leasing or ownership. And then the other aspect was, again, the farm labor housing to make sure that MidPen contributed in that way. As far as recreation, our mission that was up earlier kind of sets the framework for that, for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. So we do really, we promote public access. We currently have public access planning going on the coast, particularly for our Purisima to Sea project. We have a MOU about the Johnston property around the Johnston House for potential public access in the future. So we are, that's one of the three main parts of our mission, but low intensity use. So hiking, bicycling, equestrian use, dog use in non-sensitive areas, so limited areas for dog access. Our commercial recreational use is limited to sometimes permits for, say, large running events or large group activities of that sort.
So not permanent or long-term economic opportunities, but short-term.
Yeah, I would say
okay.
the only exception to that is a couple of stables leases.
Okay. But yes, thank you. And I would love to participate in your next public meeting. Thank you.
And just for people to know, so we have elected board of directors. We're a public agency, and the board of directors meets twice a month, second and fourth Wednesday. The second one in July coming up is actually canceled for this particular month, and then we'll go back to the schedule at the end where we expect this particular issue to be coming to our full board.
Great. I think I see Lauren's hand is up.
Yes, hello, and I have had to switch to my phone and cellular service because it kept dropping me on the main meeting. So apologies if there's any inconsistency there. But yeah, just wanted to, I also am involved in the Farm Worker Affairs Coalition here locally, the FAC, and we've, as Brian shared, been able to have some great conversations with them over the last couple of months, particularly around how the mission and activities of MidPen and through their partnership Post can support farm workers and through that farm operations. So I've been able to have some context. So anyway, I've been able to have some context on some conversations around that previous to this particular conversation tonight, and just kind of wanted to echo, Fred's comment, and also, oh, I'm so sorry. Was that James? James's comment on supporting any kind of programming that can further support the development of farm labor housing, since that is part of the crisis where the local ag community is facing on the coast. And just because I've had a little bit extra context, I wanted to just kind of ask you to share in terms of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, from my understanding, the only farm labor housing that's under mid-pen or post management are ones that were inherited with lands that were purchased, and that there isn't currently a program to develop further farm labor housing, but that was limited by the mission previously, and there's perhaps some board interest, and part of this policy is kind of looking at how that can evolve to help meet the current challenges. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit more context. Correct me if I got any of that summary wrong, and share a little bit more context on where Mid-Penn stands with farm labor housing.
Yeah, the only correction I would offer is to distinguish the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District from Peninsula Open Space Trust. So, because Mid-Peninsula Open Space Trust has actually developed some new housing on their properties. We currently have, Open Space District has 3 agricultural dedicated residences. 2 of those residents are dedicated to on-site lessees. One's for row crops on Parisma Creek Road, and then the other one's off Highway 1, kind of a farmyard operation with small animals, also the home ranch for a grazing operation. And then we have one residence that's associated with the La Honda Creek grazing lease, or one of the grazing leases in the La Honda Creek Open Space Preserve, the former Driscoll property. And that we are going through the process. We don't have the signed paperwork yet, but we're going through the loan process for improvements to that house to make it habitable for long-term use for farm labor housing. And that would be enrolled in the San Mateo County Farm Worker Housing Program. So it would be dedicated to that use. So limited structures that we purchased along with larger properties. And so far, what we've done is where that house was integral to the agricultural operation, we've continued that use either for the lessee or for having it available for ag workforce for someone working on the ranch. And under our policy development, one, should there be more of a priority for if additional houses that are owned by the open space district are not needed for, we also use a lot of our houses for employee housing to be able to run and manage our preserves. So if they're not needed for that, should a next priority be for ag workforce housing? And then through this policy discussion, should the district support ag workforce housing external to district property supporting a agricultural operation on district lands? So those are some of the policy issues that we're looking at.
Great, thank you so much for clarifying and providing that additional context. And in terms of gathering feedback from this group, I just want to wholeheartedly support that policies are expanded to include development of additional farm labor housing for the coast side. And then just as a sidebar, James, if you're at all interested in getting involved with the Farm Worker Affairs Coalition, if you aren't already, would love to have you involved, since it sounded like you were somewhat interested in that. So perhaps we can connect afterwards.
Thank you. I'll get your email from Summer, I think.
Great, thank you.
All right, I think, Bill, did you throw your hand back up again?
I did. Yes. So I've had a long relationship with Post and with Mid-Penn. Actually, I've spent a lot of time. I was on the original committee that happened in the early 2000s that worked to figure out how to structure a deal so that Mid-Penn could annex the coast out here. And, you know, and you're a good group of people, and I appreciate the work that we've done and have some fond memories of those 20 years ago of how hard everybody worked and how difficult of a process that was to get accomplished. One thing I'm curious about is, it seems to me, well, we know that Peninsula Open Space Trust is a 501c3, you know, private nonprofit corporation. Whereas MROSD is a special district, a government district that that receives some funding through taxes and is a government agency. And the way that I have experienced Post and MROSD working in the past is that Post is sort of agile and they can purchase properties without having to go through a lot of red tape and so forth. And then later on, oftentimes MROSD will then purchase those lands from Post and take over management of them, which then frees up more capital for Post to be able to purchase more lands. Are you looking to, is that kind of the basic model for how you're operating, or do you guys buy land directly yourselves? I'm just kind of curious as to how you're seeing the future operating with that, and you know, and how that might, you know, affect obviously how MROSD can work in partnership with agriculture and the you know, natural environment conservation folks out here on the coast.
Yeah, I think you described our relationship with Peninsula Open Space Trust very well. We do have a robust, a small department, but a robust real property that negotiates many of the real property purchases directly. But particularly when you need, you know, obviously we have to go through a public process for our board to determine that they want to expend funds to preserve a property. So that what you mentioned about Peninsula Open Space Trust being very agile and being quickly able to make an offer on a property. Sometimes they can hold it while we do planning and perhaps garner grant funding that takes a while to apply for and get to help leverage the taxpayer funds that the district gets to then acquire lands. So that's a partnership that has worked very well. I'll add one more particular element for agriculture. So one of the methods of preserving agricultural lands, and this in particular to intensive agriculture, row crops, where our coastal service plan says that we'll try to get those back into private hands if we purchase them. Well, there's the Surplus Land Act that all government agencies have to adhere to, which basically you have to go through a process when you're selling land that makes it available to other government agencies for use. So that makes it much more difficult to ensure that that property is going to stay in agriculture. Whereas if it goes through a private ownership, it doesn't have to go through that process. So that's one of the areas, particularly on the San Mateo coast, where that partnership with Peninsula Open Space Trust and some of these properties that we've looked at actually dividing, where the Open Space District is managing the uplands, uphill lands through grazing and adding recreational use, and the Post is retaining and then sometimes reselling to farmers at a reduced value because the development potential is removed with the agricultural easement. So that relationship has worked really well, and we would expect that to continue with this policy review. Did I answer all of that, Bill, or was there anything I missed?
I'm sure there's more to talk about.
Well, there always
Yes,
is.
thank you very much.
Kirk, would you like to just go back to the, remind people of the schedule? Just
Absolutely.
if
Right.
it looks like
I
there's no
stopped
more
sharing
questions.
Yeah. All right, so right there. Is that up right now? Nope, now it is.
So there was a couple questions about public meetings, so I just wanted to share the schedule of what we're thinking about right now.
Yeah, and so just to recap, the next step after we're kind of have finished this preliminary set of conversations with our partners and stakeholders is we're going to try to go to our board on the second meeting in September. I don't remember the date. Do you remember that date, Brian? Is that the 28th September, I think?
I believe it's the second one. I'll look it up quick.
Yeah. So that'll be the next public meeting on this. It is the 28th of September. That'll be our presentation to our board of all the comments and feedback and questions. Basically, every meeting and consultation that we've had with groups will, of course, summarize it. There'll be a long report if you really want to go through the details of it. And so that'll be the focus of the meeting, along with what we are recommending from staff outline of what that policy will be. The main themes, essentially, of what the policy will cover.
And I think that wraps it for us, unless there's any other comments or input. Thank you again for having us here tonight.
Yeah, likewise, I want to also extend my appreciation. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, guys.
I just want to say thank you as well, and then also maybe circle back because I think there's someone with their hand up. Oh wait, maybe it went down. Maybe it's my internet issues again. Who knows?
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm not seeing anyone's hands up right now.
Great. Well, thank you again. Okay, so are we ready for item number 10 on the regular agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just read it in. We're now on number 10, committee review of AAC subcommittee meeting notes on agri-tourism guidelines from subcommittee meeting 1, January 28th, 2021, and subcommittee meeting 2, February 17th, 2021.
John, you ready for my comment?
Oh yeah, Peter. Peter wanted to say something before we got into this.
Yeah, when we went and gave a lot of suggestions and all, I think and I felt at the beginning that some people were maybe feared that by some suggestions and making some changes may change what we already have. I mean, lessen, take away from what we already have. And that's not the case, and I think we all feel that that's not the case, but I think we'd feel, before we get started, would feel good if we all agreed that whatever changes or additions or alterations we make won't take away what we already have. That would at least make a lot of us not nervous that we won't lose what we already have. And if everybody agrees with me, I don't know if the process would be to vote on it or what. And I think that would really alleviate a lot of nervousness.
This is Lauren, and I completely agree that that was the consensus, general committee consensus, at the beginning of 2021 when we started these conversations, and that was definitely like one of the primary framing guidelines on the conversations that we were having. So I definitely want to reiterate that. And I know that, at the time, Laura was the planning liaison for the committee, and she made lots of recommendations during the conversation to make sure that we adhered to that goal, specifically around not getting too, it's going to sound silly, specifically around not getting too specific. But one of the things she really recommended in the types of recommendations we were discussing is that we don't get too specific with the type of activity and or the frequency. So for example, not getting, I think one of the kind of examples, if I remember correctly from a year ago, was like, I think it might have even come from you, Peter, like during an ag tourism event, can you have, have a little hot dog vendor and sell hot dogs on the side? And, adding that specifically into whether we wanted to add that specifically into the guidelines, and, purely hypothetically for the context of this conversation, something like that, at getting that nitty gritty and specific would perhaps limit ourselves ultimately, because the guidelines aren't currently that specific about the specific activities, more in the categories of activities. So Laura was a great partner in our original conversations, and I know Summer is going to be just as great of a partner now. And so I think, Summer, if you wouldn't mind continuing that in these conversations of just giving us some feedback or letting us know if you think a particular suggestion would be limiting, since that's generally has been the consensus of the conversation, to not ever diminish or take away the current jurisdiction or current, leeway, however you want to say that, of the current version of the ag tourism guidelines. That was super wordy. Sorry, that was a lot of information. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, that made sense to me, Lauren, and thanks for the context and of that. So yes, I can certainly try to fill out kind of that task as the discussion continues.
Thank
So
you.
we would feel comfortable with any of all these suggestions, and whatever we come up with would not take away from anything that we already have.
Right. And if it were to change it, Peter, then maybe it would be, making it more expansive or rather. So like if there's like, hey, you can only do it for 45 days, maybe we're trying to make it so you can do it for 60 days or whatever.
Yes, right. As long as it's not taking away anything we have, and that way everybody will feel comfortable and not be nervous that, that might be taken away. If we all had that understanding, I think it would alleviate a lot of pressure and nervousness.
Would it be helpful for the new members if there was some background or context to why we're discussing this? Or are we already past that? Anybody?
I think
Absolutely.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, context would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wish I could give it, though. I was wondering if somebody who kind of initiated it in the beginning. It looks like in 2020 it was initiated.
Yes, it was. We actually formed a subcommittee to work on this. And I would say that, Lauren and Peter are both correct in that something that at that time, with the board members that existed at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong and not representing the situation accurately, anybody, but my understanding at the time was that we were really looking for opportunities to expand and relax the rules and what's allowed around ag tourism. And that was, basically a very, important component that everybody really agreed upon. And then just how to do that. Certainly, nobody wants to turn the coast side. Well, I don't know, somebody might, but it was agreed that we don't want to turn the coast side into basically a amusement park up and down the coast, while at the same time, real ag tourism, where people are coming onto farms, they're learning about agriculture, the environment, and there can be educational programs and experiential programs and things that can be ideally as profitable as possible for the farmers on the land, to supplement their income, because we all know agriculture is a difficult way to make a living, and trying to, I don't know if it's even possible to buy a piece of land under the current real estate markets. I'm a real estate broker as well, and to purchase 20 acres of land, or 5 or 40 or 100, and then try to produce row crops enough to be able to pay for that land and make a profit and have, a reasonably comfortable lifestyle is almost impossible. The people who are making a go of it here, I just take my hat off to everybody. I've mentioned John Vars, repeatedly, and Fifth Crow Farm is, I think, of course, I don't know your finances. I don't know if you're going broke this week or not, John, but agriculture is really changing as we move along, and there's much more markets for, the supporting small local farmers, that people will pay a premium for their products. And if people can come on to their farms, and there's opportunities for tourism and recreation on their farms that can help them create some significant income streams. I think that's kind of where we're going, is to figuring out how can we do that while still maintaining the character of the coast. And so it's not like just bouncy houses and, throw up Ferris wheels or something up and down the coast, but more about things that relate directly to agriculture, the environment, our history. I think bringing in the history of the Native Americans here, and how can we sort of combine all these things into something that really, I think, fits the evolving culture out here on the coast. That's my recollection, and please add more stuff in there, you guys, but I think that covers a bunch of the stuff that we were thinking about.
Thanks, Bill. As a newcomer, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
And this is Lauren just jumping in, and I think you did a great job of providing a lot of the context there, Bill, so thank you. The things I just want to add, because I'm the process nerd over here, is that I think another important contextual point is that we're bound by the LCP, by the local coastal program, and the guidelines, these ag tourism guidelines, and additionally the farm stand guidelines that we previously discussed, and Summer, please jump in and correct me here if I get anything wrong. They are kind of like stopgap measures to provide some additional leeway and guidance for activities without triggering an LCP amendment. If we do anything, so contextually, we're bound by the local coastal program, and these guidelines have to kind of exist in the gray area between the PAD regulations and the local coastal program, because we can't make any changes that would trigger, if we make significant changes, it could potentially trigger an LCP amendment, which is a much larger scale process that would take years and involve a lot of public input and board of supervisors and all that kind of stuff. So to a certain extent, the goal and context that Bill really broke down is kind of what's driving force between it. But then just from a process perspective, we do need to be considerate of the recommendations staying within the current LCP guidelines so that we can get these updated and make real differences for farmers in the short term, and not trigger a big, long public process that would slow down the changes needed to just help, the economic viability of agricultural operations here on the coast.
Really good point, Lauren. And I think, what we were looking at too is like, what are the things we can do without needing to make
I'm not really.
Pardon?
Sorry, I forgot I wasn't on mute there.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's two groups of things. There are the things that we can do right now within the current structure of the local coastal program, which is the overlay of coastal commission regulations over our county planning zoning regulations. And that creates what's called the local coastal program, and we call it the LCP for short. And it is a very cumbersome process, which I think we've been through twice in the last 25 years or something. And it's that moves very slowly. But then there's other things that we can do very quickly that are certainly within the guidelines that are set up by the LCP now. So I think that while we want to avoid going into the LCP, well, we want to do everything we can without having to change the LCP, but I think it's also within the purview of our advisory committee is to come up with things that might, that could really need to trigger the LCP, but we look at those as long-term things and not something that we're thinking we're going to, get through in the next 3 or 6 months or something, but it's more like the next 3 or 6 years.
Great additional context there, Bill. I think the last contextual thing that might be helpful to do is to just kind of run through where the conversations were left in February of 2021, since we took our time dealing with the farm stand guidelines in the meantime. So where we're at in the process is we created a subcommittee that met several times because we needed kind of space to have some more directed brainstorming conversations outside of the context of our 1-2 hour meeting a month. So the subcommittee met several times on recommendations they wanted to give the county. Where we left it is we were bringing those notes back to this committee to review, adapt, and approve them as the committee, so sees fit. And at that point, we were going to send off these notes to the county for the county to incorporate recommended changes with the overview of what's allowable based on county council's recommendation and the community development director's, guidance for the whole program, and just the expertise of the agricultural planners like Summer, who understand kind of what makes sense from a bigger management perspective. At that point, once they incorporated whatever our recommended changes within, what they're allowed to do and what their professional expertise recommends, they were going to bring back a draft to this committee of proposed changes to the ag tourism for us to have another opportunity to ensure that our recommendations were interpreted as intended, and that we didn't limit any existing use, coming back to what Peter's original framework, kind of laid out. So at this point, whether it's this meeting or the next time we discuss this, we need to review and approve the recommendations in the second ag tourism subcommittee notes, send those off to the county for them to take some time to incorporate it, for it to come back to us in the future with those changes incorporated to review and make any final recommendations. Did that make sense?
Yeah, so more specifically, the February subcommittee meeting.
Exactly. And so, at this point, just from a process perspective, because we've had such a long break, it might make sense for us to just kind of send off the notes as we have them, because we know we're going to be getting back an additional draft of incorporated recommendations that then the new makeup of the committee could perhaps take a fresh pass at. So I'm thinking, of course, I don't want to send off these notes that are a year old without us taking a look at them. But I think I want to caution us from getting back into the nitty gritty, just from a process perspective, because we can understand that we will get another draft, an updated draft to review and provide additional recommendations at that point. So this isn't our final input stage, is just kind of the context I wanted to throw out there.
I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand.
I think it's a button on the bottom right of your screen, but
It used to be, but
you can just
How about I do it old school and just raise my hand?
Looks good. Bill, go ahead.
My perspective on it, which is a bit different from Lauren's, is that it's time for us to bring this to the full committee for the full committee to consider all of these things and put together the recommendations of the committee. My understanding is the subcommittee was going to work on it and then bring it to the full committee. Then the full committee would, really delve into the nitty gritty of it, of what we really think, what we want to propose, and then get those out. Now, I'm sure Lauren and I both agree we want to get this done as quickly as possible, but we have new people here with, I think, some fresh ideas and perspectives, and we want to make sure that I think this is a really important topic for us, and one that could have significant impact upon the survivability of agriculture as we go forward. So I just want to make sure that we do spend the time we need to get this together and then off to the county for its review and comments and get this done.
Fully agree with you there, Bill, and thank you for the reminder on kind of where we're at in the process. And I agree, I don't want to skip any steps or not take the time we want. And this is definitely the time for the committee to review the subcommittee's work before passing it on to the county.
It's also been a couple of years and I just don't remember stuff, and I'm going, oh yeah, we talked about this, and then there's that issue. So I'm looking forward to getting some sort of bullet point topics that we need to just make sure we address.
Okay, I totally agree with you there. So I think we should then, what the February 17th notes do is it breaks it down into the topics that the subcommittee wanted to address. So I think, maybe we bite off one or two of those to discuss tonight, and then can dig into the rest of them at our next meeting or next time we have the opportunity to discuss this. So just to provide that context, if you look on the February 17th notes, the largest kind of bullet points there are the topics that the subcommittee identified, and then some contextual notes on them. So just for the purposes of overview for everyone that doesn't have the notes, and I'll just kind of run down the topic list and see if there's any shorter ones that we can kind of knock off our list with the 20 minutes we have left tonight. If no one's opposed to that process.
Where are you starting at, Lauren? Are you starting at the first one, January 28th?
Yeah, I think I'll just read the list, and I think the last 2 or 3 are the ones that are going to take less time. So I may recommend we work backwards. But let me just run down the list first, if you don't mind.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. First one is the length and frequency of ag tourism uses. So the current guidelines have 2 45 consecutive day events allowed twice per year. The original purpose of those, from my understanding, was particularly around the pumpkin and Christmas tree season, that, for pumpkins that kind of have the October season and 15 days before, kind of some buffer to help get things set up and running. Same with Christmas trees. So that was the original design of having that. And something that the subcommittee really explored is allowing, increased frequency or extended time, playing around with that time to allow just more economic opportunity. So that's the first topic. Second one is farm dinners. So this was another big one in terms of increasing frequency. The current ag tourism guidelines allow, I believe, 12 per year, which was originally kind of an arbitrary number of like, okay, 1 a month. But there are some, a good example of this one is Harley Farms. I think they're one of the few that do consistent farm dinners, and they found that 12 number to be quite limiting in the feedback that the subcommittee gathered. So another kind of big discussion was looking at that number and what made sense. Does it make sense to double it? Does it make sense to allow increased use at the summer kind of high seasons, or what? So there was a lot of exploratory conversations around that frequency. Next topic we kind of addressed, the subcommittee identified as a primary area of recommendations are educational activities. And Bill, you're probably the best to kind of, when we really dig into this, provide the context there. But, educational activities are not, they're broadly defined in the current guidelines. So the only thing it says is that other recreational and educational activities are subject to review and approval of the community development director. So a lot of the conversation we had around that was if we wanted to list or add any specific educational activities that wouldn't require the one-off review and approval of the community development director, to allow and increase, again, the goal of always increasing opportunity for the farmers. So perhaps what is defined as an educational activity, what would we want to list that isn't too limiting, but adding some additional detail around approved educational activities so that they don't require additional review during the application process. So that was another big topic of conversation. Next up we had was farm tours, and that kind of fell into the same context. So again, there's just this broad other recreational educational activities subject to review and approval of community development director. So really where this kind of conversation went was that farm tours that are specific to the farm and ranch activity I'm like looking at my notes trying to jog my memory here. So Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think what we wanted to say was that that was just core ag activity to begin with. That if you're a farmer and you are choosing to provide a tour to a vendor, to a potential client, to a potential customer for your product, that was perhaps just a core ag activity. As long as it's not commercial, you're not charging a ticket or something, I don't know. I think that's what I remember leaving. That perhaps we need to discuss that more since I can't even remember. So then the last couple were kind of the smaller ones. So peer-to-peer educational activities for farmer and ranchers. Okay. This was the one where we said allowed by right with an ag-tourism permit, like didn't need additional specification. So again, if you had, I think it was like, if you had someone showing a new farm equipment on your farm and the other local farmers wanted to come check it out, that's core ag activity. Same with UPIC farm activities. We explored adding that as a specific listing, and the subcommittee determined that that was allowed by right with an ag tourism permit and didn't necessarily need additional specification. Kind of running through the last ones that are all the same here. Same with CSA, community supported agriculture member activities. They're considered core agriculture. So anything related to that in terms of having members on your farm could perhaps fall under a farm dinner, but that it didn't need specific addition because it's a core agriculture activity. Okay, last couple here. We also looked at volunteer service events. So we had a discussion on what that meant. It really, we thought was like a non-commercial volunteerism activity, a barn raising, a work day on a property, having volunteers out to help pull weeds or something. I don't know where we left that conversation. It's not specific in the notes, so we may have to revisit that. And then the last one are food trucks. And so we had some discussion around food trucks, but what we wound up doing at the time, the subcommittee, we understood that the farm stand guidelines discussion was coming up, and that food activities, prepared food truck type activities would be covered under the new farm stand guidelines. So I think the subcommittee recommended leaving the current wording as is in the current ag tourism. So I know that was another big data dump of information. But that was kind of the overarching of the topics that the subcommittee identified to sort of narrow the recommendations that the committee wanted to make. Bill, you want to jump in and add clarification there, or Peter, or anything?
Well, sure. I think there's a ton of things to be clarified in all of that. And it sounds like, we just maybe bite off one piece and go to work on it. John, you're our fearless leader. Is there a topic, a way that you think we should proceed?
If I may jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. I was on mute there. I'm just looking at the time we've got left in the meeting, and it doesn't seem like maybe we can really do much. But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Lauren, yeah, some of the things where we said, use the word like that you saw in your notes after by right. But secondly, I think the format of this do is just take one item at a time, and it says, if it's the 45-day item, the time limit item, or whatever it is, and then just work on that. And then if it's not done, and carry on to the next meeting. Then when that item's done, we go to the next item. That you list all the topics on one at a time, and that way there we could would be slowly doing one at a time, so we could chip away at it and get it done. That's my solution how to do it. If anybody has a better one, feel free to say so.
That makes sense to me, Peter.
Yep, and I was just going to say both of what Bill and Peter said makes a lot of sense. Then just with the interest of time, I might recommend we just pick the last one, food trucks. Just because I think we can get through it in 10 minutes or so. Or perhaps volunteer service. One of the ones that we determined was allowed by right, I think we probably would have time to knock off our list tonight. But also happy to, instead of digging, the other thing I want to throw out there, because I know the three former subcommittee members are just talking with each other right now. Maybe we also open up to questions on the process or clarification on the topics to new members. We don't have to necessarily dig into the first one tonight, since we've kind of clarified what the process will be moving forward. So I do want to give the opportunity to kind of just open the discussion up to any questions if we're not ready to just knock one off the list tonight with our last couple minutes. I don't want anyone to feel rushed.
Right, we because of time, we could start at next meeting because it's only 10 minutes, and but you gave a good outline already, Lauren, on the little bit of time we got to start breaking the ice.
I think it's a good idea if anybody has any questions. Especially from the new board members or people who haven't been, yakking as much as I have. There's a hand.
Yeah, I don't so much have questions as much as it's just a lot to take in, and I'm not sure where to focus. So I think we're on the right track to pick one thing, but I don't want to go back over things that I've already discussed at length prior to some of our new members. Does the subcommittee still exist to where before the next discussion, it could be narrowed down into a smaller bite to chew on?
It does not. We pretty much disbanded the committee and said we were going to bring these things to the board, but it doesn't mean we can't form a new committee.
Yeah. Exactly. But in terms of just addressing your question of trying to narrow it down into bite sizes, that it was an attempt so the February 17 notes, and maybe I can just share, maybe I can update this document for the next, for the August meeting, so that it's not all the old notes. But sidebar, contextually, I wanted to make sure all the notes got into the record and that there was no question of where things came from and what original comments led to suggestions. So we did just want to make sure everything that was left in February 2020 was brought here. So just for that contextual point, but within each bullet point of the February 17th Ag-Tourism subcommittee note document are kind of the context we were using to guide the conversations. So the first bullet point within each topic, the first bullet point has excerpts of relevant parts of the current Ag-Tourism guidelines. So you don't have to go digging in the document looking for where we're referencing. The second bullet point there, notes on subcommittee recommendations, is a summary of what we discussed in the original full committee meetings around this and in the first subcommittee meeting. So that was kind of a brief summary of where the discussions had gotten to at that point. And then the discussion questions were what we brought to the second subcommittee meeting to help guide our conversations. So that's kind of was what we created at the time to kind of create some more bite-sized pieces. And then the unincorporated part that makes it a little bit confusing is underneath each primary topic bullet point list with that summary are just my like free form notes I took during the second subcommittee meeting. So that's the meeting number 2 notes underneath it. So unless you had been in the subcommittee meeting or been in my brain when I was taking the notes, I don't think you could have navigated through these generally. So maybe what I'll suggest or offer is that I provide an updated discussion guide, kind of how we had for our second subcommittee meeting. And I'll update the notes of where the subcommittee got and incorporate everything from the second meeting and provide this type of framework for each topic. And then each topic ideally will be kind of in a bite-sized piece. If you can quickly reference the current ag-tourism, what the subcommittee discussed, and what's left, the open questions that we wanted to bring to the main committee to provide final clarification.
Yeah, maybe perhaps we could decide on what, maybe 2 or 3 topics we're going to look at next time so that we can focus on those and have our notes ready as opposed to.
Yeah, definitely. I like that idea. Understanding that the fire project is going to come back, which is probably going to need a good amount of time in August. Do we want to just pick maybe the first 2 to start with, which is the 45-day consecutive events and the 12 farm dinners? They're both kind of related to time and frequency as well. So we can kind of focus on time and frequency of current activities in our next discussion. I don't know, Bill, what do you think of that?
Those work for me. How about you, Peter? And how about everybody else? What do you guys, anybody who doesn't like that?
Now that sounds good because there'll be quite a bit of discussion just on those 2 items. And like Ryan says, they don't have to get overwhelmed by reviewing a lot. They can only have to review 2 topics per meeting.
That sounds great.
Great. Then what I'll make sure, since I'm catching up on minutes as well, I won't overpromise, but I will try to make sure that we have an updated discussion guide. There we go, for those 2 topics for August. And so those will be in the next minutes packet or meeting packet. And we can just work from that shortened or streamlined document for those 2 items.
Lauren, who was on the committee before? It was you, me, Natalie, and Peter, I think.
And then Laura as to help us kind of help, run the process.
She provided, just answered questions for us as far as what the regulations
and
are.
Judith too, Judith Humberg.
Was Judith on there? Okay, good.
Yes, Ron Sturgeon and I were also on there, I think.
Okay, good. So if the members of that committee are available to anybody who would want to give a call or whatever, anyways, I'm available if anybody wants to reach out to me, and I'll just, tell you what my memories are on it, and happy to help us move forward.
Yeah, Ryan, you got my number. If you want to call me during the week, I'll talk to you too about it.
Very good. Thank you.
Brad, I can't talk to you.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that sounds like a good approach. This has been on the agenda for as long as I can remember, and we've always had difficulty getting to it. It always gets rolled forward. And so if we could pick out a couple of items, focus on those, and just work our way through it that way, I think that is a good idea.
Agreed. And I think we've got a great plan of approach now.
So it's looking at those 45-day, 2 windows and those are for a specific permit. I forget what it is. It's like agricultural recreation permit or something like that. And then the other one we're saying is farm dinners and exploring the possibilities in those 2 areas. Just really briefly on the 45-day periods, as Lauren was saying, there's 45 days. You can get a permit to like sell Christmas trees or something in the Christmas holidays. And there was another one for pumpkins, around Halloween, which are kind of traditional big opportunities for people to sell their crops out here. But the world has been changing, and those are kind of two holidays, but there's a lot of other holidays that that people are interested in. We looked at the idea of, well, that's a total of 90 days out of the year, instead of rather allowing 2 45-day ones, but maybe you get 90 days out of the year, and those could be broken up however you wanted to, or with other certain criteria that we wanted. So it was kind of, how do we bring that into the current culture that we're living in, that has a great diversity of religious and cultural holidays that don't necessarily line up with those dates, so that we could be, more sensitive and accommodating to the diversity that exists out here on the coast and in the world. That's just a for instance of the type
Okay.
of issues.
Exactly. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is and I'm actually excited to have some fresh voices in the conversation and some new farmers with new perspectives. We were really trying to explore, okay, if we're making a recommendation for something more than 2 45-day consecutive events, what makes sense to support local ag? So and really we're still, still at the brainstorming stage. Does that mean several allowing 90 days broken up over several non-consecutive day events? Does that mean 3 45 consecutive day events? So any kind of recommendations or ideas that you think would support your ag activities around that, please bring them to the table. And then same as well with the farm dinners. And then Jocelyn, same as well with the farm dinners. We really kind of had an open question. Is 24 farm dinners enough? Is there more? What really makes sense? So really excited to get some extra input and new perspective and voices in the conversation next month.
Already, it's almost 9 o'clock. Should we continue this, the 2 items for next meeting?
Yes, it's past my bedtime.
I think so, Peter.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'll third.
Yeah. And actually, we don't even need to vote on it. John just needs to proclaim the meeting adjourned.
There we go. Good
Yeah,
job.
come on, guys. I just want to proclaim something here. All right, thanks everybody for coming. And the meeting is adjourned.
Yay, good work, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right.
Yeah,
You too.
take
Good
care.
night.